All right, let's keep going from here. So, resource depletion. This is the overuse or contamination of important resources. This could be from pollution, which we talked about earlier. So, different resources that are being depleted. Fresh water is one of them. Fertile soil I've been talking about. Clean air, as well as fossil fuels, are running out. Fossil fuels are not an unlimited or renewable resource, and they will run out and are running out. And that includes all the fuel that we're using almost around the world for running our cars. So we have to come up with alternatives to that. This is a picture of Mono Lake, which is a lake that provides water to Southern California. And this is kind of showing that it's been drying up, that there's so many people using this water that the resources are running out, and that fresh water is running out worldwide. There's a bit of a freshwater crisis around the world, and that's also affected by global warming and pollution and all sorts of stuff I've already talked about. And this is why it's important that we're conservative with our water and that we're not just being really wasteful with water so we can preserve it. I've talked about fertile soil already, clean air. Those are things I've already addressed. So, fortunately, the good news recently is that we've had a lot more rain the last few years. California was in a really, really bad drought. And in the last 3 or so years, I mean, the storms have gotten actually pretty extreme. And at times, there was even a couple years ago flooding right outside the school on Mulholland, where I was almost nervous to try to drive out of the campus because the water was coming so high up on my car. So, and you guys should remember those storms because it's just a couple years ago. So, the good news from those storms, though, is that fresh water was really replenished, which is really good. So that's a good thing. Solutions to this: more renewable energy so that we're not polluting and using up all those fossil fuels, which will run out. Being more conservative with our resources, creating less waste in particular, and also just less pollution and more laws on pollution and resource use. Okay, we also have the endangerment and extinction of animals, which we did a research paper for first semester, so everybody should be really familiar with this topic. This is the loss of wildlife from a number of different things. Overfishing, I've talked about a little bit. Our new technology using ships and giant nets, and they'll just drag nets in the ocean, taking out huge amounts of animals. A lot of the animals that they kill in these nets, they don't even want. We don't buy them at stores. There's been issues where dolphins are getting caught, and in tuna nets. And so eventually the tuna companies were getting attacked, so to speak, by people who were saying they were, proved they were killing dolphins. And now there is what's called dolphin safe tuna, and I think the nets are big enough for the dolphins to escape, basically. And in case you don't know it, some tuna are really huge, so you might be like, why would why would a dolphin get caught in the same net? But some of these tunas are really big. And so hopefully, and if you have tuna at home right now, this is a good opportunity to go check and make sure, hopefully, that you have dolphin safe tuna. A lot of the main brands are dolphin safe now, but that's because people got really upset and demanded that they start changing what they were doing. So that's another good success story where people stood up to protect animals and were successful in a lot of ways. Also, the illegal sale of fur and body parts. We've talked about this. Over here we have a pile of tusks from animals that were killed to sell the tusks illegally. Down here, this is a gorilla hand. I've talked about this too, that the gorillas are killed. They chop off their heads and put them on walls as a decoration, and they also chop off their hands and turn them into ashtrays. So these would be things that in our culture would probably be seen as pretty disgusting, but in other cultures it's a way to show off your wealth and power. And so if you have the ability to get these illegal gorilla parts and put them and show them off, it shows kind of how powerful and influential you are. And that's why I think it's still happening. But gorillas are the second closest relative to humans. They're over 98% the same genetically as us. They're very intelligent, gentle, loving animals, which has been proven. Even in the wild, they won't attack humans unless the human makes them feel threatened, which is usually a movie I play at the end of the year. We watch this movie right before finals, usually, all about an American woman named Dian Fossey, who went to Africa to study the gorillas and eventually stayed there for decades protecting them. And it is believed that they would be extinct now if Dian Fossey had not gone out there and protected them. And I've told you about her before. She was friends with Jane Goodall, and she's also friends with Barute Galdikas, who runs the orangutan charity that you guys donated to. Those are the big three, these three women who studied these apes and protected them, and very important scientists in the world and for what they've done. And then we also have illegal animal imports for sale of animals, usually called animal trafficking. These are some monkeys that were trying to be sold as pets illegally. And then it's also being really worsened by habitat fragmentation, which I talked about earlier, which deals with the forests being destroyed as well as the burning of cities. Just puts more and more of a stress and struggle for our wildlife, our animals. So as far as solutions, stricter laws. There are a lot of strict laws as far as protecting endangered species, but people still go out there and try to kill and capture these animals. So maybe the law's got to be even stricter. Conservation of resources, especially as far as destroying forests, and less overfishing. That if we just treat nature better, then the animals will be better off. And if we don't try to capture them for pets, these wild animals that we don't breed to be pets, like cats and dogs, and that more people get involved with caring about them and protecting them. And you guys did an amazing job helping the orangutans, and the Orangutan Foundation International was thrilled and very grateful for the donations that you guys made. All right, last one is invasive species, which I've talked about before as well. This is the introduction of non-native species into an ecosystem. I've talked about foxes being released in New Zealand. We've talked about rats and mongoose that got loose in Hawaii and caused a lot of problems. Recently in some notes, I talked about how there's invasive species in Calabasas, crayfish, eucalyptus trees, snails that are a problem. So this is even a local issue. And the invading plants and animals, what they do is they disrupt ecosystem stability. So here's a little predator. It's like a little weasel. You might have heard that some people have ferrets as pets, but they're illegal in California, and that's because ferrets are little predators. And they'll go out and people lose their ferrets or just release them and don't want to take care of them anymore. And they get out there and they go around and they kill little animals, and they affect the ecosystem and the community of life. And so these predators can cause a big problem. And then over here, certain types of ivy can be really invasive if it's growing in a place it doesn't belong. And some people like ivy because they can kind of grow it in cool ways. But then if it gets loose, it's a problem. And actually, what's underneath all this ivy are dead trees that the ivy destroyed. So underneath the ivy is kind of like trees that were killed by the ivy that just kind of swarmed them and took all their resources from them. So stricter laws. I mentioned this recently that some of you have probably dealt with invasive species if you've ever tried to come back from another country or from Hawaii with fruit. The reason why they don't let you a lot of the time is because of insects that are on the fruit that can come to California and affect California crops, and those would be seen as invasive species. And also the removal of the invasive organisms. And there are things you can do in Calabasas to help remove some of those crayfish, and you can actually get community service time and just get out in nature and scoop the crayfish up and get them out of our creeks and stuff, because that's a local issue that's going on. So I just have this picture here at the end just of sort of the little people on the bottom representing like humanity, and the symbol like the cycle of life or the recycling symbol around the earth, that people caring about the earth and protecting nature is really important. And most of the time when there is things that happen that are really helping nature, it's because groups of people stand up and say they want things to change and get involved, whether that's voting for things politically or getting involved in other kinds of ways, even the way you shop. Back again to looking for products that are better for nature, like organic food and things that aren't using palm oil. And there's cleansers you can buy that aren't as harsh, that are made from like plant-based materials. You can even get these things at Costco and stuff. And so something to think about as far as detergents and cleaners that are not as harsh on the environment. That's basically all the kind of cleaners and stuff I buy. Sometimes you have to use bleach on certain things, but otherwise you can buy these more biodegradable, healthy types of cleaning products and soaps and other things that are less harsh on the environment. So just something to think about as you guys get older and start buying your own things, and or maybe some of your parents are already doing these things, which would be great. And here, just as we wrap up, this is just a picture of some Native Americans. And this woman became pretty famous. I forget what her name is now, but for standing up for the rights of Native Americans because they were trying to build a uranium mine. And uranium is a radioactive material they use in nuclear power plants, and they were building it either near or on their reservation. And the Native American people in that area were standing up for their rights and protesting and trying to send the message. And so if we look at the signs that these kids are holding, it says respect Mother Earth and stop uranium mining. Stop uranium mining. This one's important. I am the future. Think about me. Our people, our water, our future. And then this older boy, air, water, people, and then probably says something down here too. So just trying to, send a message to people out there that they need help standing up to this big mining organization, and we're trying to stand up for their rights. And she became kind of famous and had some success getting people to support her cause and support these children and the people on that reservation where they lived. So people can make a difference if they care and take the time to make that difference. So hopefully, as we move forward and you guys become the next generation of leaders in the world, some of you will go out and make that positive difference as well. And I know many of you will. All right, guys. That's it for Unit 5. Next week, we will get into Unit 6.